Welcome to Southern Stories. I'm Kathy Andrews. On today's show, we'll talk about land development and land loss among African Americans along the coast of South Carolina, specifically Charleston and Hilton Head Island. Since the turn of the century, African Americans have lost 9 million acres of rural property, and that number continues to grow because of the confusion with heirs property, financial resources. African Americans continue to lose land. We'll talk with Hilton Head Islander Vernie Singleton about her family. We'll go back to Singleton Beach, a place where she grew up and where her family once owned the oceanfront property on Hilton Head Island. We'll talk to her about the impact of development on her and her family and how she finds it difficult to pay the taxes. We'll also visit a 130-year-old cemetery in Charleston, South Carolina, that was once slated for development. Those stories and much more today on Southern Stories. On one cold and windy morning, I took my camera to Hilton Head Island to talk with Vernie about the impact of land development on her and her family. Today, land that once teemed with pavilions and a diverse group of beachgoers is the site of million-dollar luxury homes. What was it like when you were growing up here?
It was a place. There were always a lot of people on the beach, especially on weekends. People would come from Savannah and I guess Atlanta, from all over. People would come from all over to Singleton Beach. Even before the bridge was built here, people would come. So I was told. I was born in 59, and people had been coming to the beach, since the early 50s. I think it got started in like 1952. But it was just a place for people to come and have a good time.
Today, Vernie lives in a trailer near her family members. She makes a living as a writer and retail worker. But it's not enough to help her mother pay the taxes and to help her family live on the land that they love.
Things are looking very bleak. I mean, in terms of the general economy right now and just what's available to pay the taxes, things look very bleak. And I'm sure that's probably good for some people because they're looking, for people to lose their land and then they can take advantage of that. But it's very difficult for Native people right now to maintain and to pay these taxes. I think that's probably the main problem that we're having now. Development on one side of you, it can cause your property taxes to go up exorbitantly, and I don't think that's fair because you may be living on your land, you may be farming on your land, a little garden, just living and paying your taxes, and then just because somebody puts something up next door to you and their property value goes up, it shouldn't mean that your taxes should have to go up too. And a lot of people are probably going to have lost land because of that. And my mother's property taxes have gone up, I'm sure, because of that. And who knows what's going to be put up on the other side of her, and it's going to cause her taxes when she's doing the best that she can to pay her taxes now. And if we lose our land, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? I mean, the land has been the basis for our survival for all these generations.
Coastal development and a changing job market has forced many Gullah people to leave the barrier islands. The traditional economy of fishing and farming has been replaced by a new crop, resort development.
I remember my dad he would get with some of the men and he would get his tractor and take his boat down and his seine net down on the beach, on Singleton Beach, and they would seine fish. And that was their way of life. People farmed and hunted and fished. And starting in, I think, 1983, when the island became incorporated, that became illegal. They couldn't do that anymore. So things like that changed the lifestyle of people. And is that fair? Is that right? We all have to live together, but when you come in and just totally tell people they can't do this anymore, can't do this because it doesn't suit your lifestyle, and these people have been here for generations, it's not right. I don't think it is.
Verney's family, along with a number of Gullah families, can trace their history to the first settlement for freed slaves, Mitchellville. Union troops brought over roughly 700 slaves from plantations they raided along the coast. Researchers at the Heritage Library Foundation are documenting that history.
They had 6 or 7 plantations as targets, and they attacked those plantations. And part of the strategy was, after they destroyed the plantation, was to remove the slave population so that the plantations couldn't be restored. And the military records that we've come across indicate that 750 slaves were taken off those plantations on the Combahee, put on boats, and brought back to Hilton Head Island.
Emery Campbell is the former director of the Penn Center and runs a transportation service on the island.
This island was a prototype for self-governance and self-sufficiency after slavery. And that's why we are also now looking at the site of Mitchellville, which was one of the first freedmen villages in the entire South. It started in 1862. And from that village, even after it disintegrated, folks moved into other areas of this island, like Spanish Wells and Squire Pope and all these various little Gullah neighborhoods that we have now left. And they survived off of the land and off of the rivers. And they became self-sufficient. They send their children to school from what they got from the land and the rivers. And people are surprised now to know that people my age and older went to college just from this island when it was isolated with nobody here but Gullah people. Shrimp boats, subsistence shrimping and fishing so that they would have, food. We had our own stores, and when we farmed, we processed our own food, and so it was a
Profitable place
to live. And compared to the other parts of the country, during the Depression of the 1930s, Hilton Headers will tell you that nobody starved on this island. That everybody, because cash was something that you didn't have to accumulate a lot of cash just to say you have it and to consume things that you really didn't need. So that was not the way of life then. The lifestyle was different. This new lifestyle now requires people to have cash. That's why the land is being sold.
With the loss of the Gullah way of life, a number of native islanders had to take low-wage jobs in the tourism industry, and they could no longer afford to live and pay the high taxes on their ancestral land.
What they've decided to do is to sell it because of the fact that the taxes are too high to maintain idle land. And then you have other restrictions on the use of the land as it is through the planning ordinances that requires, setback, and requires so much to develop a piece of land even for a dwelling that folks have just become discouraged and say, why not we sell? And the actual knowledge about developing real estate, even to this day, has not reached the Gullah population.
Not only are native islanders impacted financially, but their way of life, fishing and farming and hunting, has been replaced by tourism and development.
And what happened is we got this new rush of a new economy called resort development here, and just ignored that way of life. For many, many years, that way of life has been ignored as being out of touch. And yet it was the kind of life that we now on this island are pretty much wanting to preserve. The environment, all the trees, the open vistas to the waterways, and yet much of that has been cut off from Gullah people. I'm disappointed there. I'm disappointed in the fact that nobody recognized the Gullah culture as they come to develop. Not only Hilton Head, but the whole coastline. And we have got to get that changed.
Congressman James Clyburn created legislation to preserve the rich Sea Island culture with the Gullah Geechee Corridor.
Of all the stuff I've ever done, I've been in Congress now 18 years, this is by far the most popular thing I ever undertook. And we decided that the way to do this would be get all the stakeholders involved and create a commission and empower that commission to do the background, do whatever needs to be done to help preserve and, I might say, glorify this culture.
The Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor extends from Wilmington, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida. It preserves one of America's most unique cultures. Designated by Congress in 2006, the corridor honors the important contributions by African Americans who settled in the coastal region of Florida, North and South Carolina. But will the corridor help people who are suffering financially from high taxes and a lack of good jobs? According to Congressman Clyburn, it will take more than government intervention to solve the problem.
Families will have to come together, pool resources, and do things that I see a lot of people not willing to do in order to preserve that. If you look at, they aren't selling this land to individuals. This land is being sold to corporations, and they build hotels and timeshares and that sort of thing.
So you think it's good? That's more of a private sector issue? You think
It is.
People are going to have to come together and try to educate themselves on other possible alternatives like leasing the property and that kind of thing?
Absolutely, absolutely. Don't sell in fee simple, but sell with lease agreements, maintaining the fee simple ownership.
And you still own the land if you lease
Yes,
it out, right?
absolutely.
Coming up next, in one of America's most beautiful cities, an ugly crime occurred. It was 1910 in Charleston, South Carolina. A Jewish merchant was murdered, and a black man was accused. Bat Humphreys, a former CBS producer, was fascinated by the story and penned Dead Weight.